Welcome everyone back to an episode of Uncanny Commentary. I'm your host, Jalen Blue, and with me today, I actually got some very special guests. I got the Professor Neil and Ben Comics himself. Gentlemen, how are you guys doing?
Great.
Great. Happy to be chatting with you, Jalen.
Yeah. So over the past 2 years, I think Ben and I have been in communications on both of our long journeys of X-Men and comics that we've kind of been on
Yeah.
in the Friends from Work Discord, speaking with each other. Neil, you've been in there giving wonderful insight throughout and reading as well. Just being a big, huge fan of the comics and finding all these things kind of interesting. Ben, you are like a comic wizard, it seems from reading.
Yeah.
Sometimes a little bit too big for
I
my
think
head.
I think that's the degree I got was actually comic wizard. I think that's what it says. Exactly.
Comic.
Yeah.
And you actually approached us about doing this kind of episode. So I think I'm gonna hand it off to you and kind of like lead
Sure.
us and to where you want to go today. So I'll give it to you from here.
So we had this question that was I think we've been circling around it for quite a while. And that is basically what are the X-Men for? And the reason that question comes up is because there are plenty of superhero teams out there. There are plenty of superheroes out there. And for some reason, there's this disconnect between the Avengers and the X-Men. And there's not a lot of clarity, I feel like, out there. The other part of it to me is that every generation has a different answer for those who have been fans of the X-Men. And I'm curious about how you distill that down because, for example, when the MCU came on, you immediately understood who Iron Man was. When
Right.
each Avenger came along, you knew immediately what you're getting. And there was very little complaint from those who had been reading the comics.
Mm-hmm.
That was in 2008. In 2000, I go in a theater. I'm an avid X-Men reader. And I walk out with my dad and he says, "What do you think?" I was like, it was cool. Well, why was that? Why did I have that feeling? And why do I still have that feeling today? Even a little bit after watching Spider-Man yesterday. So I think we should explore what is the essence of it, because I think that to me is what they did. They captured the vibe, the essence of Tony Stark. They figured that out. So how does this work? What is it? What is the X-Men? What is it for? Neil.
Sure. Well, I think one way to start grappling with that question is, as you're sort of doing already, identifying what they are not. Right. There's a place already filled by the Avengers. Right. This superpowered team, loosely affiliated with government authority, that is going to protect the world from these cosmic and sometimes domestic threats, right? Terrestrial threats, but they're going to be dealing with these big superpowers, and they come together, and they are, as their tagline says, Earth's mightiest heroes, right? And that, so whatever that means, that's not what the X-Men are, right? That's the Avengers.
Yeah.
And similarly, we've just a whole new generation now is maybe discovering the Fantastic Four, and I'm excited for them to see this team of explorers, this sort of family unit, where this family 1st unit that was really a theme of the new movie, and there always is this sort of rootedness in exploration. They're almost the Doctor Who of the Marvel universe in some ways, because if you're going to take if you're going to be discovering new worlds, sort of a Star Trek meets Doctor Who, right? You get from the Fantastic Four, but that's not the X-Men. So there's two things that the X-Men aren't for, right? We've already got that in the MCU, so I'm looking forward to, as much as anything, listening to you guys. I'll chime in, but I want to hear from you two who have been really taken a deep dive into the X-Men lore and into the comics, how they're different.
And I want to say this up front. I think all three of us have had some exposure to X-Men comics that have come out in the 21st century. I don't think we are blind. Like, we know some of the names, we've read some of the comics. We understand that. But I will admit, at least for myself, and I have a feeling for all three of us to a degree, the blind spot that we have is the 21st century. I feel like we probably have a better understanding and more clarity with regards to comics that came out from 63 on through to near 2000. And part of that is because there weren't as many comics. And we can get into that because I love talking about the business side of this stuff. But the reality is that there weren't as many comics coming online in terms of what you were reading when you were going to the comic shop or the newsstand or spinner racks or whatever it was. And then all of a sudden, we kind of have blown things up to where I don't even know I have no idea what X-Men comics are out right now because there's just probably too many for me to even check. I don't have that amount of, put it that way.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Outside of Hickman stuff, there's not really anything post 2000. There's the Hickman and then the Morrison run. Those are about the only two ones I really have read outside of my journey before starting this. So I'm also just very much from 62 or 63, whatever it was, to 99 currently. And I kind of want to answer a little bit of your question, Ben, of who are the X-Men in comparison to the Avengers. And I think there's kind of two things when it comes to that. Is when we got these Avengers characters between 2008 and 2012, Neil, you can probably I was 8-9 years old, so you guys can probably speak more on this than I am.
Yeah,
but these are characters.
Watch the movie
a bazillion times. But here's what I'm trying to make is those guys weren't popular characters, right? Until that moment, they weren't really household names like they are now. These movies
Iron Man,
they
weren't
names. No.
So whereas the difference is,
can we pause that point for the record? Iron Man was not popular. He was not popular. He was an icon with regards to the Avengers, but it was almost put off as a joke. And he was his most popular thing that he ever did was he was an alcoholic. I mean, not popular. And yet, thankfully, he is popular right now. It's awesome. It's a great thing.
And then that's where I think it is here, where the X-Men, they're so iconic. They're so popular before, like you said, before you even went and watched the first movie in 2000, to where you have all these more popular, iconic storylines with the big help to Claremont. But when you get to these movies, and they kind of like just didn't do any of that. Now, take that of what Marvel has been able to do with these characters who haven't had much meat on the bone in comics, and now you're getting your hands on the holy grail, I think, of like what you can do with story-wise, and now you can put them in the Marvel universe and you have all these other characters. That's where I am putting my trust and hope that blossoms. But your question was, who are the X-Men? The difference also with this team, I think, compared to other teams, is anybody could be an X-Men, whether that's black, white, queer, straight. You're not sure of yourself. Like, you don't get that in the Avengers. This is more of they're a family, and this is a group that took in Sabretooth. You know what I mean? Like this, they're taking people in for a unit.
So I have a question with regards to this. So I've been rereading a lot of the comics that I loved that were X-Men comics. I'm in the middle of a huge process with regards to that. And what I missed, because I'm now reading some back issues that I just didn't read. What I missed was at one point, Angel, Warren Washington III, he says, he calls them a gang. He calls the X-Men a gang. Now he's with the Defenders. He's trying to socialize with, normal people. And he refers to them as a gang. And I gravitated to that term immediately.
They do jump people at any moment. They do not play a fair fight. They will jump.
They don't. they don't have those rules. There's a few of them that do. But the reality is, by the time Claremont comes online and he's writing these stories, he's not treating it in the normal way. And that traditional superhero group. By the way, let's be clear about the timeline with regards to superhero groups. That wasn't really a thing until the 50s, and then it was just basically DC. And then you have in the 60s, Fantastic Four, a family. The Avengers and the X-Men happened basically, I think it's a month apart. I don't know if I'm right about that, but I think it's about a month apart. And there's not a lot of super teams. There's the Justice League and them, basically. Now we have so many, I can't list off the amount of teams. It's not possible.
Right. If you're saying Avengers, is it the Mighty Avengers? Is it the New Avengers? Is it the Young Avengers? The West Coast of it?
All I'm talking about here. Yeah.
Great Lakes Avengers, my favorite.
Oh yeah, sorry, Neil, I forgot about that.
Thank you.
Everybody does, but you always bring it up, and I love that about you. But that's the point: is that we aren't able to really distill this stuff down very easily now, but we could at one point. And so by the time Claremont's writing, yeah, there's more teams. There's the Defenders. I'm always saying, and it's only backed up by like 5 issues, but I'm always saying that the Defenders are a roommate situation. And I'm saying that the Avengers are a classist government, you have to follow Cap's rules type of vibe. And then you have the X-Men, and the X-Men are a gang. We are told they are students at a school, but the way that Professor X operates, and I agree with Jay Edidin from Explain the X-Men, they are right. He's right. He's the villain in the story. Professor X is the villain. He kidnapped these children, and he turned them into a group of a gang that goes around and does what he thinks is right. And I actually think Magneto, when he ran the school, was a much better teacher. He was self-critical, for one. He was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm a teacher. I go to school every day. I have no idea what I'm doing. That's the right answer. You don't know. And I just feel like the whole situation is not a team dynamic, but it is a family. Go ahead.
The whole Charles thing. Can I say real quick that for someone who learned Charles through the movies, through the 2000s movies, going to read the comics and learning about Charles actually being very much kind of like a jerk 90% of the time to these kids and being a jerk. There's actually not a lot of school time. The kids, I think the team graduates. No, the OG team graduates within the first 16 issues, and then we actually don't get a class again until New Mutants. But even then, he pawns them off to Magneto, and then when you get to Gen
he's
X,
at Columbia University more than he's at Columbia University more than he is at the Xavier School. It's ridiculous.
So those are things I didn't know about that kind of like blew my mind. Speaking of Professor, I'm like, wow, he's kind of a jerk and not very nice. And from what I understand is like right now in the comics, he's even more of a like him and Scott don't get. I don't know the story behind it, but they don't really get along.
Yeah, I don't know, but I feel like that's where things went. I understand the basic beginning of the Hickman run, and then I know some Excalibur stuff. So I really don't know enough. I know more about the Bendis stuff than I do probably anything else in the 21st century. And I guess Jason Aaron too. But to me, that period of time, when Kitty called him out and called him a jerk just because she's 13, and he's a jerk. He's an adult who's making her do stuff she don't want to do. It was accurate. And you can see that going forward. I don't have a problem really with the way that he was portrayed in the film. Both Professor X and Magneto in the films, the acting is so good. The characterization with regards to that performance is so good. It's just its own other thing. That's all.
Mhm.
It's just not what we
Right.
experience when you're reading Claremont.
If there's anything Fox did right, if anything, it was actually change that about Charles and actually make him more of a lovable mentor that the team can actually rally behind.
I agree with you, because then if you don't do that, I feel like the film audience would not be receptive to both Charles being the Charles we read during the Claremont run, and Logan being Logan, which they also just continuously, that is Logan. There's no question.
Right. Yeah, I've got a question for you guys. So I've read a fair amount of Claremont X-Men, and I read all the old, the original stuff, the Lee Kirby stuff. And yes, Xavier's a jerk. But for me, maybe not having gotten as deep into it as you, it always felt like, to some extent, we're telling a story about school kids. And in those stories, 98% of the time, the teacher's a jerk, right? Like, and there's always the growing and learning is to a large extent in resistance to the teacher, not because of the teacher, right? In the stories of kids in school. So it seemed to me like Stan was just setting up that common dynamic early on, that the teacher is just really hard on these kids, and they don't quite understand why he's being so tough on them, and they're always frustrated with him. But if we are adult readers, though he was writing mostly for kids, right? As adult readers, we might recognize this as just sort of a archetype, or something commonly done in children's writing, where the teachers are an obstacle, the teachers are mean. And talk to me a little bit more about, so that I really understand what you're saying about Charles, how it moves beyond that to something more.
Yeah, because most of the students feel removed from their parents. There's few examples where they're not removed from their parents, and that is specific to mutants. You have to understand the context, the broad context, the commonality that they have is at the point in their life where they are the most vulnerable to an emotional impact of an event. The moment when they're figuring out, oh, this is who I am, and then all of a sudden, that moment they have that thought, now there is this crazy thing that is happening. And by the way, Marvel does this is like, to me, this is the difference between Marvel and DC. Marvel's very grounded in terms of trying to establish things that are real world, but they also try to make sure that the character has a issue with the power that they have. That is why Peter's day goes the way it does all the time, because he's struggling. The struggle is real, even though it's a fantasy. And so when you read a Marvel comic, you're typically experiencing something where you're like, oh, I relate to this character in this way because this feels real, except for this is magical. There's no way this can actually happen. And now it seems way worse for them than it would be for me in this situation. So you have these teenagers, these 12, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19-year-olds who are at a point in their life where they can't process in the way that a mature adult would, gaining a power. Then you have this, professor who brings them into a school and puts them along with other people who he's also trained generation after generation to keep peace between the normal people and them as the other. And when you are the other, that's a whole layered thing that a lot of people in our society understand and experience. And that's why it's so relatable. It's really complicated stuff. And to me, it comes down to the relationships between the people. And the worst person with regards to the relationships in the building is Professor X. Everybody else is trying to understand themselves and everybody else around them. in some way, and that is a real struggle that you read on the page.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think you see a lot of the bonding moments between the team members themselves, trying to like make sure, hey, you guys okay? This happened to you. I don't see that a lot with Charles with these children. Also, for me, the early issues very much early on is a lot of Charles, like he'll do like the telepathy bubble of his head when talking to him. Super cool.
Yeah.
He like yells, and they even say, "Hey, man, stop yelling! Like you don't have to yell. Like I can hear you fine." He's like, and he constantly tells him, "Shut up, listen to me. Like shut up, listen to me," and then we'll yell. And it's a theme throughout. There was in Uncanny X-Men, I think it was like 63 maybe.
Okay.
It's Charles has been dead, and it's revealed that this alien race named the Xenox are coming to Earth, and then it's been revealed that Charles has been alive the whole time in an underground room in the basement for like these past 2 years. He's actually been alive, and Jean's known all about it.
Dead but not dead. Yes.
Yeah, so he's constantly dying off, but not really being dead, but not telling his kids where they are, not telling like these kids that he's alive. Constantly shouting at him, telling him to shut up, and then you don't get that. I don't feel like what Ben was saying is like the camaraderie between the team building each other up. I don't get that from Charles with the team, which right now in 99 you have a lot of it's Morrow and Maggot have joined the team, and their Bastian he has taken Charles. The Bastian thing's over. Charles is still missing, and the team's like, where's Charles? Like, we gotta get Charles. And Morrow and Maggot are constantly asking, why are you guys like so obsessed with this guy? Like, why? What does it mean? Yeah. What does Charles mean to you guys? Like, why him? Right. Like, why? And they constantly say he's the one who showed us to be us. He's the reason we are. And I do kind of like I get that, because actually Charles's dream I can get behind. Hey, let's have peace between
that's true.
us two. But like that dream I can understand with, but I have not seen that side of Charles himself to where I can see these characters wanting it that much, that they've been like wanting to express how they're wanting to feel to Maggot and Morrow of how Charles is. I have not seen that yet, but the dream that they talk about, I understand.
Yeah, I agree with that to a point. It really is the leadership question, specifically during the Claremont run, is really interesting, because you have Scott being the leader, but Scott's his whole persona, he literally has a mask over his eyes, so he can't really relate on that level one-to-one with somebody. The reason Jean works so well with him is because she's in his head. She knows what he's thinking. And she ends up, much like Medusa and Black Bolt, she ends up being the translator for him. Well, he goes off the rails when she's, not quite right, or not even present, or dead. And he is not a good leader in that way. He's a rule follower, and he's leading a gang. It's a problem. But then you have Storm.
But Ben, that dude can lead a team. That dude can. He can get them to squad up.
They have to actually be a team.
They do.
Half the time he's not leading a team. He's leading a different thing. A family, a gang, a class. It's just not the same thing. Yeah, you go into battle with Scott Summers as a leader, and if you have connection with him and trust him, he's a great leader. Aurora's a better leader for this particular group because she understands. And honestly, the whole thing comes down to the role of Black women in America, and how we are always looking to them to be the ones. to step up, to do the thing, to make sure that, no, we are getting through this. We are not going to let this happen. We do that to them all the time. And so she plays that character. That's the character that she's given. I would say that the nice thing about the X-Men is she kind of directly deals with that in a lot of ways. She leaves. She comes back with a different perspective on things constantly. She is trying to grow as a person, and she still makes time to deal with Kitty's BS. Like the stuff that Kitty put her through when she was like usually in comics you can read the bubbles in their head. You don't really get that moment where she's like, man, Kitty, what is going on? That doesn't happen. You don't read in Aurora's head. We don't know. But what we can tell, what we can glean with our 21st century maybe perspective is that, oh, she's racist. She's just a snot-nosed little kid. And yet Aurora is able to be like, oh, she's a teenager.
She's not. She may be a better leader of the X-Men in a lot of ways. She kind of lets the Morlocks down, but we'll give her a little grace there. I do feel like,
man. First of all, I love Neil. You get into this. I think Neil and I are probably of the camp that I'm going to speak for you in a sec. For a second, I think that both of us look at it as this is a Morlock story. Like the Morlocks they're the actual mutants that are actually dealing with mutant problems. Everybody else is really privileged. And so when you look at their situation and how interesting it is, really how they have set this up, these certain rules and culture that they go by, you have this situation where she ends up through just the procedure of how they operate being the leader, and then she's at that moment very absent from both the X-Men and them. She fails both teams.
Yeah. It's interesting with the question that's guiding us here, what are the X-Men for? I'm struck by the fact that Xavier puts together a school and puts together an army, right? Or puts together a strike force or a gang, if you like.
Yeah. But not to the level that Cable wants him to.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Like, no, we're really going to go straight for it.
And they're two.
And that's when I was like, I'm out. I'm done.
Yeah, they're two very different things, and of course, the X-Men are for both. The X-Men is sort of a home for stray mutants, and I know you talk about Charles taking these children away from their families at moments when they're the most vulnerable and all that. And of course that's true, but the way it's often been framed, like, I mean, if you think of the animated series from episode 1, it's Jubilee, the runaway, in a foster situation where her family is scared of her. She finds a home with the X-Men. So they often go with Orphans and Runaways when they start to frame the X-Men narrative, just like Rogue in X-Men in 2000.
Yeah.
And like maybe we're kind of doing something like that with Jean here in the MCU, right? That we start the narrative from a troubled young teenage girl on her own, right? Scared and alone, who's taken in by Charles. So we don't see him as a manipulator taking these children to be his army. We see him providing a safe space for young people who are different and scared. And that's a Charles I can get excited about, right? Creating a safe space for people who are different and scared. And I think that's what a lot of people relate to when they think about the X-Men.
No, I agree with that. And but the other thing about it is, I think one of the struggles I've had since 2000 is they kept adapting. They took the lead once the animated series got, basically Claremont was like, it's fine, do whatever you want. It's 1992. I don't care anymore, is how I see it. I do think that he had painstakingly and brilliantly set up a dynamic where each individual character's narrative was intertwined very carefully and delicately. It was a tapestry that was not always perfect, but pretty smart. And because of the business side and because of the working conditions and process for both animation and film, we haven't really gotten that tapestry at all. And by that, I mean the relationships between Kitty and Rogue and Aurora and Rachel Summers and Danny and Ileana, all these characters, all these girls for the most part, they aren't redundant. You can't just mix them all up and give them each other stories, which is things that have happened. It is obvious that Kitty becomes Jubilee.
Yep.
Because of the Lone Wolf and Cub history, with comics history, with regards to what all those guys were into. They were all reading that book. That is why Frank Miller has a career. And they basically started repurposing and copying that. Jubilee became Kitty in the animation series. Rogue becomes Kitty in the films. And
they even do the whole Wolverine Jubilee together thing in Australia, right? Because there's like Jubilee and Wolverine kind of like a team up for it.
Yeah, and the thing is, it doesn't do service to Rogue's character at all, and it doesn't do service to Jubilee's character at all, and it completely erases Kitty from this context. And the reason it frustrates me, not just because I'm the person that's the age of Kitty, it's frustrating because Kitty served a specific purpose. She was just for basically 9 years. She was the point of view character primarily. And yeah, that's the person you're following into this dynamic, but she doesn't struggle like the other people are struggling. She comes from a place of privilege, and then her family blows up.
I love Kitty, by the way. Amazing read for me that I've been going through. Like, I know of her from the Elliot Page stuff, but
yeah,
such a highlight of reading her in the comics. I have loved her. So
and
whenever Kyle,
we haven't seen it at all. We don't really know, and we've told the stories that relate directly to her so many times. The reason the Morlocks piece is really powerful to me is because not only is Kitty taken in by Charles in a time when her family's going through a divorce, but then she gets kidnapped and almost becomes a child bride to a Morlock, and then the Morlock that she almost becomes a child bride to ends up being one of their closest buddies. How do you explain that to a normal person? You can't. You have to see it happen deliberately and slowly over time in those pages, or somebody really smart at DC, at Marvel or at Disney needs to get on board with the story and realize that's one of the most powerful stories Marvel's ever told. It's one of the most interesting periods of time
of Kitty, right? Not the child
Kitty,
bride.
But if you keep that piece in there, it only adds to it. It doesn't make it worse. It doesn't make it necessarily more problematic, as long as you take the beats that it takes, the time that it takes to tell the story right. You don't have to show everything. You don't have to tell everything. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that these characters have specific paths that they're all on, and they are so intertwined. When you start pulling it apart and remixing it up, which is what we've all done this whole time for the last, I don't know, since 92, it's not quite gelling. And that's why I'm asking the question, what are the X-Men? What is the utility of the X-Men? But also, how do you distill down the X-Men? Are they completely different now? Is there no way to get them back? Because I have to say, X-Men 97 has a vibe. And it is closer to the films. And it is definitely perfectly copying the animation series. And so if you grew up with the animation series, I get it. It's brilliant. And there's been times where they show things that I love from the comics. And so I get my little moment of happiness. And then literally 30 seconds later, I'm like, what? Why is that character here? And I have had to change the way my brain operates, basically, as I'm watching both the film and the animation series, which is fine. That's a nerd comic problem that I have. It's fine. I'm okay. I just would like for them to try to do it a different way.
Yeah, well, the Leewalds talked about, how generous Claremont was, like you said. I don't know if he'd washed his hands of it, but he definitely said, I get it. You're making a 22-minute, Saturday morning cartoon for kids.
Yeah.
The format doesn't, for kids, I think it was closer. It was more soap opera, more of the relationship stuff than just about anything else Saturday morning cartoons had ever done. And yet it was still a far cry from the Claremont comics.
The only exception I can think of is Robotech.
There were soap operas. Yes, there were Saturday morning soap operas.
No, but I mean like animated, like watching.
Yeah.
That was the most soap opera show of all time, I think.
I have the vaguest memories of Robotech. But I do think that I give the animated series a lot of grace, and I really enjoyed the original and am really enjoying the new. And for me, when you see Glob Herman, or when you see a character that you like, and even if they're just in the background, the Brotherhood someone shows up and Random is there with his gun hand, and I'm like, it feels like every time a big group of baddies shows up in the animated series,
I couldn't, Neil.
Random's part of it.
I can't do it with the Random. It's such a poor character type. But anyway.
Well, it is just, he's a random character. I feel like the name just gives it away.
Actually, it works perfectly.
Thank you for calling that out in the Discord, by the way, Neil. I love that. I was like, yeah, someone knows ball. Someone knows Random.
Yeah. I agree. You know what I'm thinking about? So Justice League, the Unlimited series, there's an episode that was all about... Mr. Gold, thank you. Save me. There was an episode, and it was just about how he's basically having a bad day. He's not a very good team member. That's my favorite episode of all those. And if we had episodes like that, where you just centered the character and you just sat him in there and you really let you get to the core of it, you can do that with a lot of these characters that really they should take the time to do. We all want that Glob Herman episode. Why can't we just have that? But the other thing is that if you're going to tell a bigger story, there are certain characters that you do need to focus on. And if you're going to distill it down to what are the X-Men, I really do think that we are talking about characters who are in struggle, that have interpersonal connections with each other, that have some undertones of romance, but for the most part, because I'm always like, this is a romance comic. But the reality is what it is it's not really, we're going to save the planet.
Right.
It's more about what it's like to struggle with things, and then to find people when you're struggling that are going through the same thing. And if you're going to do something like that, the powers are cool. I love the powers. They're great. But it's really about the conversations. I'm always harping on it. If they're drinking coffee, that's the X-Men. If they're in the kitchen drinking coffee, that is an X-Men. If they're at a mall and hanging out, that's an X-Men scene. You need that stuff way more. And the problem with the animated series is you just can't do it. It's just not practical. I totally understand that. And the problem with the Fox situation was they do exist in the rest of the universe. You do need the Fantastic Four to be there. It is the Fantastic Four and the Avengers that find Jean Grey in the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
So those bigger moments actually tie in. and I loved the film that I watched yesterday. Brand New Day was great.
Oh yeah.
And I am not a big, huge
Yeah.
Jean fan. I just am not. I was really hoping it was going to be Rachel. It was not. I'm okay. I'll be fine. But the reality is that we don't know what's going to come. And that's better. I just want them to get the vibe right. They have been doing that with Spider-Man. It's the best Spider-Man. And it's only because it just keeps getting better. It's not like there was anything wrong with the other ones. They were all great. But this is the best one. And we need to keep pushing forward. And now we are pushing towards something after Secret Wars that is going to be hopefully done really well and capture that vibe. That's what I'm hoping for.
One of the reasons I think the X-Men historically have connected well with Spider-Man. I know for a lot of people it feels strange to them. There's not really a relationship between Jean and Spidey, that's anything to talk about in the comics.
There's other ones, but not that one.
Right. But there has been a relationship and crossovers between the X-Men and Spider-Man with some frequency. And I think part of it is there's almost always with the X-Men that their powers are not unambiguously helpful, are not unambiguously good. They're not easy burdens to carry. And I think that's something Spider-Man shares with them, where most of the Avengers, they're just super powerful, and there's nothing negative about being Captain Marvel, right? I mean, there's nothing fundamentally negative about being Iron Man, and you're billionaire, playboy, philanthropist, right? So I think that seeing Jean show up in a Spider-Man comic and having this be one of the launching pads into the X-Men, I feel like thematically, tonally, it feels like a good place for that to happen. Now there are rumors out there of the next couple projects having X-Men members introduced as well. Ones you might expect, of course, one in Black Panther 3 that we hear about occasionally that I would be thrilled to have show up there. And I even just saw a rumor, probably just a stupid rumor, about a mutant showing up in the Ghost Rider film. I don't think a page of that has been written yet. So I think that might just be one of those speculation news things on social media talking about Nightcrawler in Ghost Rider. And I thought, well, that'd be cool. Though I'd rather have Ilyana, I think, if we're going to have a mutant.
That would be interesting.
That's
part of the. I think that's part of it. Is I don't mind them thinking outside the box, but I also think that some things that make sense. Two people that hang out in hell, makes sense that they might run into each other. But the other thing about it is, like you mentioned Captain Marvel, and I'm like, for me, a huge part of Captain Marvel is Rogue's story.
Yeah.
And a huge part of Mystique and Destiny's story is Rogue. Like, these things really, I think, matter. And I think they matter in a way that needs to be, cared for. So I don't mind that, Jean and Spider-Man have this interaction. It's a pretty classic, setup for them. It doesn't really matter. And the way, and I think Friends from Work, I didn't listen to the whole episode, but the Friends from Work reaction was really good in that they were talking about how, okay, so you have these characters in Spidey's life that are, legacy characters from all these other walks of life. And that is normal for New York in the Marvel universe. That is how it works there. And Spider-Man is usually involved in some way. When I think about Spider-Man and the X-Men, I think about how Longshot did something weird up in upstate New York, which, by the way, they never are like, it's just upstate New York. There's no actual towns. But he does something, and then he comes to New York, and he's on the news, and both Spider-Man and She-Hulk are like, wait a second. We got to go get this guy. And they do it separately, and they end up both interacting with him in a fun way. But he is so unique in his own way, and it is a problem for him. He is lucky, he's naive, and then when he uses his luck, it causes problems down the road. These are like fun interactions, but each character needs to be played in a way that they are that character, and that they did that in this film. They absolutely did it.
Absolutely. And yeah, to piggyback off that, Ben, like one thing going into this, I was like, oh my, like Jean. We all heard the rumors she's Jean. We pretty much all knew it going into the movie.
Well, I didn't
that was
know
one
it.
Thing for me.
I was the only one.
Only one. Going into this, I was like, how does this going to play out? And then when it got to where it's basically Jean's, I don't want to call her the villain of it, but the first half of the movie is portrayed while she's jumping through bodies, all this stuff. There's one thing I know about the X-Men is if one of theirs is captured, they're doing all they can to find that captured X-Men. I feel like that was great here. This was Jean. Her sister's been captured. This is Jean doing all she can to find that captured character. And then you think of, okay, Jean's backstory is she has this tragic loss from a neighborhood friend that basically sparks everything. They didn't do that here. They did Sarah, the sister, and all that, which I thought was an amazing twist. I thought I actually, when they said Sarah, my buddy made a comment after. He goes, they said Sarah, you sat up in your chair. This was literally me in the movie. I was like,
oh, I know.
What?
You and I are probably like one of 4 people who were like, wait.
People who know who Sarah is. Yeah. And so there was a change where they gave her powers, much like Jean, but that didn't bother me. And I thought the loss, all Jean needed was a loss of someone that meant something to her, which was that childhood friend. I think actually works better here being Sarah, because like Sarah doesn't really do much. Like I think she dies by a house fire by some bigots.
And I think that actually helps Rogue's character. Sorry, not Rogue. It helped. Her death actually was more effective in the comic in helping Logan and Aurora's relationship than it did with regards to Jean at all. Jean was like on X Factor. She was like, you barely knew that they were even in contact in any way.
Yeah, so this was done way better. It set up that stage for Jean having that loss before ever becoming an X-Men. It showed that as X-Men, this is what they do. Like if Trask has Cyclops like somewhere, they're all going to do all they can to get him out. And I just thought everything done mutant wise for this movie was done phenomenally.
Yeah. I do think that if we are introducing the X-Men through this process, brand new day, it's a brand new day. This is how we're doing it. It makes sense because Jean was kind of the catalyst for the whole thing in 63.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that if they are really, which we've heard, this is what they're doing. If they're really going through the Claremont stuff, I really hope that they're understanding. Yes, it's about a diverse group, but it's also highly leveraged towards a story about teenage girls and their struggles specific to their context in this Marvel world that they exist in, and how they are interconnected. If they approach it where they're like, Jean is the first one, and we're just going to keep building on that. And you have people like Nightcrawler come in, who is really helpful in that situation. Not really that problematic. If it's going to be about Scott, if it's going to be about Logan, I'm going to be like, haven't we, even in film, already seen this? And there was a big reaction to the Jean piece because everybody's like, we've already seen Jean's stories. And I got to agree with that, because I'm like, pretty much most of the stuff.
Have we, though? Have we seen them done well, though? Like, even my friends I've seen in the Discord, people go, we don't want no more Phoenix Saga. We don't want Phoenix. I'm like, dude, give me a good Phoenix Saga. Everyone will change their mind if they see a good Jean story. Like, it has not been done accurately at all.
I agree with that to a point, but I think that's why you do have to change things up as much. That's actually why I think that they are going to align things. I think Disney's like, we can't wait. We can't wait. And first of all, if it's me and my generation, We're Gen X. Nobody cares about us. We're too small, and we're really getting old real fast. So I really think they are trying to get things moved along. And that's pretty much how X-Men 97 is operating. They're operating like we are going through all of the years in one episode. And then we'll just do it again the next episode. So I do think that they're trying to get aligned where they're probably going to be like 10 years behind the comic or something along those lines. Would make more sense. Which means there's a lot of story to tell.
Yeah, I don't know how you're going to feel about it all, Ben, but it does feel like what Marvel Studios has done, and I think most of the time done pretty masterfully, is draw from very popular comics series, but change them in meaningful ways that work well cinematically and create surprises for even those who know the comics backwards and forward. And I think we're all going to need to prepare ourselves for the fact that the X-Men we get in the MCU will draw inspiration from our favorite comics and our favorite story arcs, and we'll realize, wait, you're using that character in the place of that character, or you change the dynamic.
And I'm okay with that, as long as it works in a way that still captures the intent. And the reason I harp on that specific period of time has a lot to do with who I am and how I grew up in the comics I was reading and what that meant for my life. But the other piece of it is for the business that I just happened to be reading at the time where the X-Men became what they are. And it was only in that moment that things started to balloon out of control. And we've used the balloon out of control piece too much. And we've used the precursor to that period of time too much. That 84 through 89 piece, you can change what you want. It's fine. But you need to figure out a way someday in film to capture what that was. And it is not an easy thing to transfer to film unless you really are careful and take your time. And they haven't done it. They have not really pulled from that in any real way.
We haven't seen the X-Men ladies at the mall yet. And once we see them at the mall, we'll know, okay, we've settled into
but it's also but it is also that, it's what it doesn't have to be kiddie. I'm just saying that what I'm saying is it's that period of time between going through from the point where Charles basically abandons them because he's injured. He goes off world. And then they all the way through to where they are in Australia and go through the Siege Perilous and are dead. They're dead. There's no more X-Men. There's Excalibur in a multiverse situation. And even X-Factor basically blows up at that point and becomes a government operation, which we've seen done very well in 97. But that period of time, it's pretty much, to me, it's the best story that Marvel's told because it is the story that made them money. Made them so much money that they were the top selling comic for the first time consistently every year. And that specific moment led to artists taking over and basically exiting with millions of dollars and creating Image Comics and blowing up the collector's market. And then the crash happened in 96. None of that happens if you don't have Claremont doing this specific story. And I want to see it on film. I'd like to see it.
Absolutely. Somewhere. I think there's no way you don't do some form of version of a Claremont run. The dude did it for what? 15 years, 20 years,
16 years.
So
16 years. Then he came back and did stuff, which I'm not very familiar with because I was bitter.
So there's no way they don't do it, but there's, like Neil hit on, there's one thing Marvel does well is take these hits and actually make them pretty decent in film. And that's one thing over the years of watching these, I've had to kind of like unlock in my mind of like the people who get super mad whenever it isn't verbatim for comics is that's my medium right there for that. This is a new medium where I want you to be, like I said, take inspiration the proper way for it. But also this is movies is basically my ultimate universe, my absolute universe for DC. It's a separate universe where I want these stories told just slightly different, a little bit different to make this universe make sense. And that's what they did here with Jean. It's slightly tilted to make sense, but I still think that they're going to take like I think Greg sent me a message of like the official lineup that they're wanting to do for the movie, and the first movie is going to have like Beast, Jean, Cyclops, Rogue, and Emma. And I'm like, okay, so like we're already introducing Rogue and Emma on this team.
Yeah, exactly.
So like that's I haven't even gotten to where Emma Frost is an X-Men yet.
Yeah, and that creates a weird. It only creates a weird thing for you if you're thinking about it in terms like I'm saying, which is that there's these great stories to tell. Well, when you start dealing with that sort of a timeline change, that's a pretty big leap, and it takes a huge leap of faith on I have been told, I've been shown by Fox and by the animation series, this is how you do it. And the other side of that is what Neil's talking about, which is that Marvel's done a really good job since they've taken over their own stories, and since the acquisition with Disney, of changing it enough so that it suits both the question of, I don't want to tell you everything because you read it in the comic. I don't want you to know everything. I'd like you to actually enjoy being surprised. There's a difference in the medium. You go to a film, you are a captive audience. You're locked in there. Yes, if you're at home, you can pause it and turn it off. But if you're in the theater, you're locked in there. And you need to be open to being there for the ride. When you're reading a comics, it's different. You can literally skip pages if you want, or stop reading that whole series right then. I'm stopping on page 3, panel 4. I'm done. This is the end of the story as far as I'm concerned. You don't get that in the film. It's a different experience. And so I should be able to go to the film and really feel the vibe, have the vibe be similar enough for me and my brain not to be like, well, that character would never do that. But also the scenario can be different, or the relationships can be different. And that was the nice thing about Brand New Day to me, is that it really was connecting the characters, who they are, film, comic, whatever, and having them interact in a completely different way, scenario-wise, and having it work. If that's what we're doing with that lineup, fine. It's okay.
It can't be worse than Mystique being the leader of the X-Men and starting the X-Men. It can't be worse than
I don't know.
That.
I didn't have that hard time with it, but by that time I was a broken man, so that's fine.
I will say, we now that we're going to get Rogue eventually here in the MCU, we have a great Captain Marvel, and you can introduce Rogue, but then I cannot wait for the moment when she encounters Captain Marvel and takes powers. I want that to happen.
I'm going to riot. No, I'm just kidding.
I say, do we think that's how they're going to?
I don't know.
I don't know if they want to continue with that character. I don't know if not. Do you think that's how they kind of like at least sideline her? Like that's how they just kind of take her out, like have Rogue absorb it, and then we have Rogue. Yeah.
Oh,
MCU Carol.
Powers? I don't know how you do that without.
Well, the films have never done a Rogue who's super strong and can fly and all of that. So you introduce Rogue with simply the power to steal powers. And then, if you ever, again, this is how you tweak things. You eventually have Avengers versus X-Men, right, in the MCU.
Yeah.
And that ends up being when Rogue encounters Captain Marvel, right? Or something like that. And takes down the Avengers' one of their most powerful weapons.
Neil, how do you feel about the titles thing? I feel like that's one thing that's been setting me up for disaster. Is that, for example,
are you talking about 97 right now? A Brand New Day.
Brand New Day is fine because I didn't read Brand New Days, but I'm sure there's somebody out there who read it who was like, oh, that's not Brand New Day.
Yeah, but they actually sort of did Brand New Day in the last movie.
It really is the Daredevil Born Again. I still to this, like, we basically told it before it was called that, and now we're not including the parts that they like. It throws me off. I'm like, just call it Daredevil. Why are we doing this?
Yeah,
but
well, I mean, they're just being cheeky because they
figure out
relaunched the series.
Yeah, I do think they figured out smart ways to do it so that it, fits with that title. I think for the most part they've done that. My brain just has issues, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I've been finding myself trying to read too much into these X-Men 97 titles. I think this last one was Strange Land, Savage Heart. And there was in the original animated series, there was an episode, Savage Land, Strange Heart. And there have been 4 or 5 episodes in this X-Men 97 that are just this. They had that X Lies in Videotape previously, and this one they had Weapon X Lies in DVDs or whatever it was called. So that there's going to be some connection to, some nod back to an episode from the previous. And but those titles also often connect very specifically to something in the comics that may or may not be relevant to the episode. I guess the titles don't really bother me because the titles are just sell something or to a placeholder for something, and
branding, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
All right, fine. So
did we solve what they're for? Do we know yet?
Do we know? Okay, Jalen, what are they for? What are the X-Men for?
For everybody to enjoy these amazing stories with these amazing characters. If you're thinking about, they're for you. Basically, they are. No matter what walk of life you come from, they are for you. They're fun stories with amazing characters, villains and heroes, who even will toe the line of gray with every single one of them.
Yeah, I want Neil. I'm going to say it last. Neil, what is your take? That's brilliant, though. I like what you said.
Well, I think that for a number of things. One, they've sort of famously been an analog for every sort of injustice and civil rights issue and equality issue along the way. And so they are the story of the other, the story of the outsider, and they offer the promise of purpose and found family. And I think those promises, those are really important and valuable for so many of us, because even privileged white males like myself, there are ways in which I feel in my experience of life like an outsider, or like another, in my day-to-day. We all have those experiences. They are more profound and real. I get that for a lot of other people. But they're part of our experience, our lived experience, and the way our brains operate. We always feel isolated to some extent. And I think the X-Men offers that sort of a dream or vision of purpose and family when you feel like an outsider.
Yeah. I agree and like both of your takes. I guess for me, the utility of the X-Men, what are the X-Men for, is to piggyback a little bit, is it's an on-ramp. It's about accessibility for the audience to see themselves and to see their struggle, or to relate at least to the struggle that they're seeing, and have that struggle not be about an individual, but about social connection. And I think that's super important, especially now. And I think that Disney has the option here to do something really wonderful with it. And I hope that they center that theme personally, as opposed to centering some huge heroic action of team ups. I also want it to exist, though, in concert with these roles throughout the Marvel universe that we've already seen that all have something different to provide to us as an audience. I think that, you know, Marvel's great. I like Marvel. I hope they keep doing great work.
It's great.
Absolutely. I love it.
Yeah, well, in X-Men 97, when Rogue chucked Captain America's shield off into the jungle, I love, and I really hope that the MCU doesn't steer away from putting the X-Men at odds with other heroes, other groups that we've been rooting for, to get us think a little more critically about that outsider position.
I would say that Brand New Day was a really good indication that they are willing to do this. I think that the relationship they showed between Peter and Bruce, and Peter and Jean, and Peter and just about everybody else in that film showed you, oh, he's struggling. We can all relate to these struggles that he's going through, but we can also, because we know those other characters, even Jean to a degree, we can see that. And Jean is the way to go with regards to introducing somebody new that is an X-Men, because she seems like an antagonist, but by the end you're like, wait a second, I might be a Jean person. And that's where it works, in that space.
It's great.
I love it.
Seems like a good place to wrap up.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually had a blast here, guys. That was fun. It was actually fun talking to people who have some knowledge of X-Men. I don't really get that a lot in my life. Thank you guys for coming on here. Yeah,
it was awesome.
Thank you.
Well, guys, you guys have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your night. All you guys listening, thank you guys for listening to Uncanny Commentary with our talks. Guys, go check out Sons of Gun for all things DC, and go check out all things Marvel at Friends from Work. They're amazing.
They are amazing.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Jess.
Thank you for time.